Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about conclusions. Specifically, we're going to talk about the call to action, which is the last part of your conclusion. We've been talking for the last couple weeks about our TBT graphic organizers, our triangle boxes triangles, and today we're going to again focus on conclusions. Our hashtag for that is TCA. So let's go over the individual parts of our conclusion. Of course, the T stands for the thesis statement. Remember, in your conclusion, you're going to replace the word because from your original thesis statement with a period. That makes two sentences, and then you're going to paraphrase it, changing around maybe some nouns or pronouns or even verbs so that you have the same idea, even in the same order, but it just sounds a little bit different. Now, the second part of our conclusion, the C, is our counter argument. Remember, the counter argument is where you identify what others believe. That would be the opposite side. So on our screen, you'll see, you follow along, you write others believe, you give the opposite side, and give me one reason why they believe that. So others believe blank, 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 because blank, blank, blank. But then you add a refutal or rebuttal, so you finish off that counter argument by saying but, and then you tell why other people are wrong. So now let's get to our focus for today's presentation, the call to action. The call to action is where you're going to write a sentence telling your audience members, whoever your paper is directed to, what they need to do after reading your essay. You know, should they vote for something? Should they help someone? Should they contact somebody? So let's take a look at a sample to kind of help you through this. Here on your screen, I have a sample introduction. So I'll read it to you. Please read along with me. It says, even a well-rested amateur can outperform a tired professional athlete. It's a fact that humans work and respond slower while sleep deprived. A good night's rest is especially important for a high school student to be ready for the workload. The internal sleep clock of a teenager changes and makes scheduled sleep difficult. In addition, the majority of high school students stay up late on the school days and wind up being tired during class the next day. To counteract this, later school hours would prove to be an effective strategy. Later school hours would allow high school students to be well rested and more productive, as well as give students time to catch up on work they need to complete. So our thesis statement in this paragraph is the last sentence. What we're trying to do is convince our audience members that later school hours would allow high school students to be well rested and more productive, as well as give students time to catch up on work they need to complete. So just based on reading this introduction, let's identify the audience for this paper. This paper could have multiple audiences, but I just need to focus on one. Maybe I'm writing this paper to my principal. Maybe I'm writing this paper to legislators. Maybe I'm just writing this paper to my parents, trying to encourage them to maybe go talk to my principal. It doesn't matter who the audience is. You just have to pick one probable audience, and then we base our call to action based on that audience. Now, of course, it has to be realistic, but again, I can choose any one of those. So I'm going to step out of viewing this presentation and kind of work on a call to action using this intro. So here I have that same paragraph that we just looked at. Okay, so my thesis statement for this particular presentation is, or for this paper is, later school hours would allow high school students to be well rested and more productive, as well as give students time to catch up on work they need to complete. So I'm going to pick one audience for this paper. Let's say I'm going to write this paper to my principal. Okay, because maybe I heard a rumor that my principal is actually, going to have a meeting that talks about whether or not we should change our hours. Okay, and I don't necessarily have to put that in the paper, but I just have to think about that. This is brainstorming. So if my audience is my principal, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a call to action. I'm going to basically tell my principal what I need him to do for me. So if my stance or my position is that I believe school should start later, then what I'm going to tell my principal is, administrators, okay, so I'm going to kind of keep it broad, administrators, or I could say principals, should be sure to contact their supervisors to encourage them to change the school hours. That's it. So one sentence basically telling them what they need to do. Now, I could actually pick something different. Let's say that I wanted the audience of this paper to be other students. like we've heard a rumor that they're thinking about changing this, and so I would want my fellow classmates to read this. And so let's say that my audience are my peers, they're students. So what would I want students to do after they read my paper? Now again, I believe that later school hours would allow high school students to be well rested and more productive, and give students time to catch up on their work. So what could students do to make sure this happens? I could say something like this in my call to action. Every student needs to stand together and ask their principal to change the school hours. So, in summary, a call to action is basically where you've identified who your audience is and you've told them what you want them to do after they read your paper. Okay? Something that relates to your main idea. If I believe that later hours would allow students to be well rested, then I need every student to kind of fight for that right. Let's say you're doing a paper maybe on a cell phone issue, whether or not cell phones should be illegal. The use of cell phones should be illegal when people drive. And you write your paper, and so maybe your audience might be, again, state legislators, or maybe it might be policemen. So if I believe that it should be illegal to use a handheld cell phone while you drive, I might say policemen all over the city should be careful to look out for those people who are putting other people in danger. And then maybe policemen should vote to make it illegal to use cell phones when you drive. Again, it's just coming up with that audience and telling them something that they should do after they read your paper. Good luck on creating your call to actions and completing your papers with a great finishing call to action.